This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. So we have a very, very packed pod because we have 7 reviews to get through for this pod episode, which we're excited about, especially because we're going to start with Superman and Lois Season 3's review. It's spoiler free. Of course, we're not going to spoil you before the episode drops, but the wait, I believe, was worth it.
You guys, I've been waiting out here for 6 months for new episodes, longer than that actually, of Superman and Lois. And before we get into it, I just want to say Superman and Lois is the best superhero show on TV, and my opinion has not changed after watching the season 3 premiere. We were sent both the first 2 episodes, but our kind of way of doing things is that we always review the series premiere, since it'll be the first episode that everyone sees. And what a start to the season it is.
I agree, because it's really hard to launch a season. Everyone has expectations when you're in the hiatus. They have thoughts on how the season is going to open. And what I really liked was how settled season 3 starts. We're back in the thick of things. The Kents are Kenting in a way that, they have great family dynamic. And Clark and Lois are happy. They're extremely happy. And it's nice to see them in a good place, and that for them to recognize they're in a good place and be excited about it.
That's what I really loved about this episode, because it was very family focused. We got a lot of the practical side of their lives, which Michael's always said this is like a family show with superheroes, right? That's what you said.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we got. And it was a nice ease into a third season, I would say. I really appreciated spending more time with these characters apart from the larger than life aspects, which I love too, and they were present, no spoilers. But yeah, I loved easing. It was you're just hanging out with some friends, and then stuff really starts to hit the fan.
No, I totally agree with you. I think the thing that makes Superman and Lois work so well is that it's kind of like Parenthood or Friday Night Lights meets a typical superhero show. So say Parenthood meets The Flash or something like that. But this episode in particular leans more on the Parenthood side of things. It's definitely a more family focused episode. You get to learn more about the characters. It's very much the calm before the storm, and I really appreciate those kinds of episodes, because we have 13 episodes of a who knows what kind of season to expect here, and they decided to take a beat and let us just see the characters. One of my biggest issues is when they take hiatuses between seasons or whatever. It's just from one storyline straight through the next. We got a moment to pause and play with the characters here and see who they are. Let's see how they're dealing with both the aftermath of the previous events and the start of these new ones. And just you learn so much just about Clark and Lois, about Lana, just about all of the characters in Smallville. And I love that little community, and this episode is full of that.
And we open with a celebration too, at least for the beginning of season 3, with it being the boy's birthday. I think it's a really good time to be reflecting on paths forward, because 16 is such a milestone for teenagers, and both Jordan and Jonathan are trying to figure themselves out. They do that every season, but I feel like the more they've been brought into their father's world, the more they've had to figure out who they are, not just with him being Superman, but who they are outside of him and what they want to be. And I think that's an interesting thing that we'll probably be discovering more as we go through the season, especially as it's clear that Jordan and Jonathan have separate paths to go on.
Yeah, definitely. No, you'll see, if you've seen the trailer, you'll know that Jordan and Clark are probably destined to have another storyline together, because that's definitely the way the season has been building, or the show has been building throughout the seasons, because Jordan is very much the superpowered element of the show. If we break Superman and Lois down into family drama meets superhero series, Jordan is the superhero part of it as far as the kids go. He's definitely looks like he's going down the Superman in training route. And Jonathan's story, the reason we fell in love with Jonathan's story is because him and Lois are the ordinary people in an extraordinary family. And no spoilers, but I feel like we will continue to see that arc throughout this season. And I feel like now is a good time to mention that I think Michael Bishop is doing a great job as the new Jonathan. It is very hard to slot into a well-oiled machine such as this, especially a show with the kind of visibility that Superman and Lois has. And it takes no time whatsoever before you're like, oh, look, we're catching up with Jonathan again. He's done such a great job of channeling Jordan Elsas's performance, but also adding his own unique vibe to the character. It feels like catching up with an old friend very quickly. We move away from the transition. There's not like, oh, it's a new Jonathan. It feels like the same character, but with something different. And that's what you want at the start of any season. So I just wanted to take a moment and say, excellent job on the recasting, because he's doing a great performance.
I really like him too. And I like the way that they there's some visual cues I won't give away, but there's some like visuals of when he's first seen that are like, it's kind of like if you didn't watch this show and you didn't know they were recasting, you would be like, oh, it's a scene. But like as a fan, you're like, oh, they referenced it visually without like beating us over the head about introducing this new actor. But like you said, he brings something completely different to the character. He's a little bit, I don't want to say more fun, but like there's a little bit more of like a lightness to Jonathan, I felt in this season so far, which I enjoyed seeing. It's a different take on the character, which I think is important when you recast. Like you can't just pretend to be the person that played the part before you. You have to give it your own spin, and I think it's gonna add something great to this season.
Yeah, I think Michael Bishop plays Jonathan as being more settled. Like, not to say that Jordan and Jonathan were always combative, even though they had their moments, but I just feel like there was a more frantic energy to Jonathan in season 2 that seems to be gone now, at least in the premiere. And that might just have to do with the fact that everyone's kind of out of school, I think, for the most part, and he's had time to settle with all the decisions that he made in season 2, which were not great, and yet has found his footing again. So it's interesting to see how Michael Bishop takes that further into the season. For me, I wanted to know what the scenes were going to be like between the twins and whether I would feel like there was something missing. And they have this great moment together that speaks to the different things that are happening in their lives, but also they're allowed to bond and joke with one another. That made me feel like, okay, this dynamic is going to work. Because to me, that's the most important relationship between these two characters is the brotherhood. And I wanted that to stay intact. And it's going to take time to grow, but it's definitely there. And I was excited to see that.
It really does, because they have such a unique dynamic, and I feel like both characters are so important to the show. Not to say that the twins have the subplot of the series, but obviously we have the Superman story, and then we have the twin storyline. So it's equally as important to the success of the show. And based off the premiere, I think it's going to continue being successful because Michael Bishop and Alex Garfin have great chemistry off the bat, and I hope we get to continue to see it grow as the episodes go on.
For sure. And it's going to be interesting too, as since this is a show that balances family and the action rather well, and they did that terrifically in the season 3 opener, how we do the family dynamic things with what's going on over with Bruno Mannheim, which we can't really say anything about him other than like he's going to be a fantastic villain. Felt very delicious in his scenes. I can't wait to see what happens next.
Oh, without a doubt. I was a big fan of Chad L. Coleman on The Walking Dead. I was a big fan of his performance as Tobias Church on Arrow. He has such a larger than life screen presence, and in a very short amount of time that's instantly coming across in Superman and Lois. I feel like Bruno Mannheim's definitely going to be a different kind of villain than the show was used to doing, because I know the concern here was that we were going to start in a similar route in previous seasons, and that we have this businessman villain who then turns into an alien character halfway through. We saw that with Ali Austin in season 2, but I think we're going in a different route here, and the presence of Bruno Mannheim is instantly different than what we've seen before. Superman and Lois is shaping up to be a bit darker than it used to be. Every show goes on a dark turn in season 3, but I feel like Superman and Lois will handle it excellently, because I've come away from the season premiere very excited for where we're going.
Yeah, I feel like the premiere is going to end and everyone's going to immediately want episode 2.
Oh yeah,
Like a
I
wish for a
did.
2-hour premiere.
Yeah.
I did, and I had both episodes.
But so then it'll roll into Gotham Knights, which not exactly necessarily a tonal shift in the sense that, we are still doing superhero television, but it's very much a teen show in an era of CW in which they wanted to move away from that. I think that Gotham Knights is going to be a grower for those who are interested. If you are going to watch the premiere, you're going to need to give it episode 2 as well. You can't bounce from the series, I am gonna bounce from the series. But I think that's just a reflection on like what I'm looking for in my television right now. I don't think it's necessarily a reflection of the series.
Yeah, because I think we all kind of had a lower bar after the trailer, because the trailer, after watching the episode, really didn't do the pilot really any favors. I was, I mean, not as blown away as like after we watched Wendy and we were like, what? Why were they hiding that? But like objectively for me, because I I have seen The Dark Knight. I have seen The Dark Knight Rises. Don't remember the second one, but oh my God, remind me to tell you guys a story of when I went to see The Dark Knight Rises because it's really funny. So I don't have any like feelings attached to the Batman universe, you know? Like I'm just watching as a fan of the CW shows. I'm tuning in as an objective viewer. And to me, it was an entertaining hour of television for the most part. Like you would think that based on the reaction of fans who are just like praying for its downfall based on nothing, that it would be like this hot mess, but it wasn't. Like it was objectively, I think, good. It was not unwatchable. It like I'm not gonna. You can't, if you say that it was unwatchable, then I don't know. You have some misplaced beef. I thought it was great. I thought it was good, better than I had anticipated. But yeah, like they didn't really market the teen aspect of it too much, I feel like, because there were scenes where like Turner was giving like Chuck Bass and like, you know, I don't it just there was a teen aspect that lured me in as like a fan of teen dramas who was kind of a casual like superhero fan. So like to me it was a successful pilot, not the best of the three that we've seen from the CW, but you know, for what I saw objectively, it was fine. It was a good hour.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like I feel like out of the three of us, we have our love of teen dramas and we have our love of superheroes. So a show like this should draw all of us in. And I think the first trailer, like Reed said, did not do it any kind of justice whatsoever, because I feel like ever since it came out, everybody has been prepared for this show to fail. The bar has been on the floor and everything. But I do just want to say that the pilot was a lot better than I was anticipating it would be, and I was not underestimating it in the way that other people were. It was. The thing I struggle with Gotham Knights is that I feel like this could have been a huge hit 4 or 5 years ago. I feel like it just kind of missed the boat of the teen drama and
Yeah.
superhero eras on this network. But I do think that the show is still full of potential. And I like that Sabrina said that it's a grower, because I do agree with that completely. Maybe it could have done a little bit more in its pilot to get us there. But generally, I think that the show still has a lot of potential, particularly because the dynamic of its teen characters, the Gotham Knights, if you will. And I can't wait to see more of that. Again, we were sent the first 6 episodes, but the way we do things is we review the premiere, because that's going to be the first episode that everyone sees. I am going to watch the next 5. I can't actually wait to see them, because I feel like the show is going to get better as it goes on, which is why I hope people stick with it. It's not the most perfect, everything came together on the night kind of the pilots, but generally there's a lot to work with there, and I think it will get better as it goes on. I just think it needs to find its footing. But again, it's bigger than the trailer implied it would be. It's better than the trailer implied it would be. There's a lot of good in there, and I feel like with growth that could become a lot of great. And it's again at the worst time for a show like this, because even the best of shows sometimes will not get the platform they need, because the CW and DC are in eras of change. But I'm going to hold that hope that this show can at least have an excellent season-long run. I don't know how successful it will be, but I do think it could get there in the end. I'm not the biggest fan of the show yet, but I think I could be by the end of its run. So I'm not. I don't like to see people hating on the show. I don't like to see people turning against the show, and I'm certainly not going to be one of them. I'm a DC fan through and through. I have a lot of hope in the series, and I think it could get there by the end of it. So I'm holding out hope for it.
I'm about to do something a little blasphemous. But if I had to compare it to another teen superhero drama that was a grower that people ended up falling in love with, I would say Marvel's Runaways.
Mm.
And I remember I got invested into that show because I had read the comics, so I was going to give it a chance. I remember when I watched the first episode, was not feeling Runaways. They had changed a lot. There had been a lot of focus on the parents, which wasn't something that was they did in the comics, and it was a little slower paced. But I feel like if you're someone who enjoyed Marvel's Runaways, if you stuck it out to see the rest of the episodes, then if you did the same thing for Gotham Knights, you probably will end up falling in love with the show. It's a type of, everyone's dynamics are interesting. They play into certain tropes we're used to, like Duella is, I mean, she lived up to her name, right? Like she's like capricious and mercurial, but she's fun. And Turner, because he's an OC, I know people are already like, we don't care for him, we're writing him off. And I think, and you could do that. You could decide to do that, or you could just give him a chance, just to see what they decide to do with him. He might end up being a blend of different Batman sons. He might not be. He might be his own new thing. But I feel like writing Gotham Knights off, if you're someone who does want to give it a try, maybe if that isn't the move. For me, I said I wasn't going to watch it again because I just want different things for my television. But I think there needs to be room for people to be able to say that's not for me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that shouldn't be on the air. Like I wouldn't say that Gotham Knights doesn't deserve to be on the CW. It definitely deserves to be on the CW. It definitely deserves.
It feels like a CW show.
It feels like a CW show, an earlier CW show, which is interesting. We're very leaning towards. I think we had said late WB, early CW.
Yeah, like the early, like 2007 when the CW was still. It's like, you know, like the early 2000s when we were like, is it the 90s still? What are we doing? That's kind of like the tone of the show when the CW was like, we're kind of still the WB, but we're also trying to be this new thing. So it was like, to me, I was surprised by getting that feeling that I was like, oh, this feels CW to me, which I was that was maybe the most shocking part of the show. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I know. I am completely with you on that, because an example is like Birds of Prey, which was released in the early 2000s, and there are a lot of similar qualities in this. The like dull Gotham City, the like original story built out of the Batman mythos. Yeah, there's a lot in there that I feel like it's like a blend of different eras, and that's quite interesting, because we said the same thing about the Winchesters and Walker Independence. So I hope these three pilots don't turn into like the CW's greatest hits tour on the farewell of what it was, because there's so much potential, and Gotham Knights has so much potential, and I hope people give it a chance, because I've given it one chance and I'm ready to move on to the next by watching the next 5 episodes. And I hope people stick with it, because there's a lot to work with there. And it could be one of the most fun shows on, not even the CW, on TV, in the same way that Riverdale was. So give it a chance, remove yourself from the situation, go in blind and have a good time with it, because that's what I did and I enjoyed it.
I like the aspect of going in blind. It's like leave your DC knowledge at the door and just enjoy the show.
This is an Elseworld story.
But moving into Winchesters, which, by the way, I think if you like Winchesters, you probably like Gotham Knights. I don't know if we were to make a post, it'd be like Winchesters, Gotham Knights, cross audience, just for those who are interested. But that was a really good episode of the Winchesters.
Where have they been?
I know.
Like, it was the most compelling, engrossing, all of the adjectives. It was the best episode in weeks.
It was.
Yeah, no, in my opinion, it's the best episode since the pilot, perhaps the best episode of the season.
There is so much like energy and style and the visuals. Like, this is what I kind of wanted it to be each week. It was, there's just, between like the A story and the B story, there's just so much fun to look at, even if the stories weren't as, fun. It's always a little bit,
that opening.
Yeah,
unsettling with that clown.
The clowns, the circus. Ada was in her New Orleans, or was she even in New Orleans? I don't know where she was, but it was just like fun. so fun and stylized, and I was like, why'd you save this for the penultimate?
When this show was pitched and this show started, this is what I thought it was going to be. And honestly, I kind of wish maybe they dropped the coherent single storyline and just do like a season of Villain of the Week episodes. Because if they could turn out like this and they're not being dragged down by the slow moving main story, that could be a heck of fun. And I know that's from an era gone by, but that was an excellent supernatural like quality episode. And I wish we had more of those from the Winchesters. I mean, if anything, it means it could be heading towards going out on a high, but I would have liked to have seen more of it because that was the Winchesters at its best.
It was. It also, if they had put this episode after the Mals Volta one, but like pulled back on some of the John and Mary to make it fit that part, I wouldn't have even blinked an eye. It really does work for the arc of John struggling with his anger, and that spilling out into the case. So when we get returned to him and Mary, I was like, oh, I mean, I understand why he's mad because, he was just accused of murder and he's on the run, but it just felt disconnected from where John had been because he had not been as angry. And so now we were really angry and trying to live in the bliss of being on the road with Mary as if we're not a fugitive.
No, I agree with you totally. I feel like if you take maybe one or two story beats out of that storyline, this episode could fit it in anywhere in the season. And maybe the fact that it came so late makes you ask questions like that, as in where has that come from? Why is John suddenly like done a 180? And I know the fact that he's obviously been framed for murder and everything's affected him. But yeah, I want to say this episode came at the right time, but dare I say it could have come a little quicker? I don't know. But again, I don't want to just go into the whole, oh, this could have been this or it could have been that. I just want to appreciate this episode for what it was. High stakes, standalone, edge of seat, gimmicky, and more than anything, fun. And I think that's what's been missing in some of the more recent episodes.
I even liked the conflict between John and Mary, as frustrating as it was as like a viewer. Like, for me, like, I don't want to see them fight. I want them to be fine. But like, it was exciting to watch. Like, Drake and Meg played off each other so well in that conflict that it was, even though you're like, oh, why are they, I don't want to see them fight. It was like, I don't know, it was really fun to watch. Like, like we know what's gonna happen. So like you can't worry about them too much. But like it felt like this conflict was deserved and earned a little bit. So like when you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is good stuff. And even in the scenes where like they're splitting up at the carnival or whatever, and that dig John throws in, like, oh, actually, I'll go with Lotta. And I was like, ooh. I don't know. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, even as frustrating as it is as like a shipper, I guess.
Yeah, well, this episode was really honest. It was really vulnerable too. And there can be an honesty and anger as well. So, like, because a lot of times you need to be angry in order to say the thing that you haven't been saying. And I love that the main point is they both like basically yelling at each other. You're hiding behind me instead of dealing with what's actually happening in your life. And to be able to be combative with somebody that you care for and still be able to be like, I'm going to protect you at all costs. That's something that works really well for John and Mary, especially. Like, I also love how, in a way, clowns are ridiculous, but they're also terrifying. And so, like, we have the terror of actually dealing with our emotions and the terror of the monster of the week, who also had trauma from wanting to be able to remain in happiness, and how a need to, what did they call it? Toxic happiness? Toxic positivity. This was an episode about toxic positivity, and that's what John was doing, and that's what Limbo was doing. And you have to be able to deal with the negatives in your life, and that is what this episode was about.
And then the fact that it jumped to the end when John was doing everything he was supposed to, even with the anger holding him back, he went into that mission with like a clear head. He knew to cover his eyes so that he wouldn't see the mirror. And then that ultimate feeling of defeat when he just turned around and he looked at the wrong mirror and he had the clown makeup on, and just that moment when the tear came down his face, oh, that crushed me, because like he had the smile on his face, but he was broken on the inside because it happened and there was no getting away from it. I thought that was very expert use of merging the overall character's arc with the villain of the week story. It worked out really, really well. And I feel like that was the most crushing moment of it all. And it's pretty effective. We have talked about how it's constantly had to be Mary or John saving each other week in, week out, week in, week out. This week it was up to Lata and Carlos to do it. and the fact that all of the stories interconnected at once. There was no subplots in this episode. We got to see them work as a foursome again for the first time in who knows how long. And they came through for them. They were the MVPs of this episode. You also got to see the perspectives on John and Mary's argument. You got to go back to some of those original dynamics that were fun. Like John and Latta had a really nice friendship. And of course, Mary and Carlos knew each other for a long time, but there was that kind of awkward tension. So we got to explore all of that in one episode. So in a way, I do see why this was left at the penultimate episode, because you got to deal with all of that at the same time. But it also reminded me of what we were missing throughout the season, because you got some of them great dynamics that we didn't get in so long. But generally there was just so much in there, and I really appreciated that no subplots, the main story, and all of the characters got a moment or two to shine.
There are a lot of little moments that I love too, like to your point, the Mary and Carlos scene where they're going through the carnival, and I think they're talking about John, and she just like she spins around and like starts crying into Carlos, and he's uncomfortable. And I was like, Mary, I know you're not crying. Like, this seems like the fake. I was like, what? This is so weird and out of character. I kind of liked it. And then I was like, okay, you're on your Nancy Drew tea. I love that she was like, there's somebody following us. And I was like, Mary, that's my girl.
And then Carlos was horrible at like not like looking, what she say, at his 1 o'clock or something. And he immediately gave up what they were doing. I was like, Carlos, be stealthier.
I also loved in the beginning John eating that sandwich. Like, I need to see the behind the scenes of that, because I know that was just Drake eating a sandwich.
Yeah. He's like, it's an amazing sandwich too. And I was looking at that thing, I was like, it's not. I see what might be roast beef and some mayonnaise. There's nothing else on the sandwich.
We're overcompensating here, John.
It was really funny though.
It was. I think that this episode does well, besides getting to the nitty-gritty, is there is some levity to it. And there's like, it doesn't lean into the ridiculousness, but I love how Carlos and Latta save the day inside a clown car as they talk to a clown child who is his brother. And that is how. And but it's like, it's serious business and it's serious acting, and it has to be skilled writing and it's skilled acting, because the whole scenario ridiculous, like just hilarious.
Did they know that was the way to like break the curse spell or whatever, or was that just like luck on Carlos's part? I'm willing to suspend my disbelief. I really don't care, but like in the moment I was like, did they know, or was that just like Carlos was like, I can do this?
There was a moment in the hotel when they're looking through the books, and this is where I had to suspend disbelief, because apparently no one's ever gotten out of Limbo's tent, but somehow they know how to defeat Limbo. But so so in one of the books it says that in order to defeat Limbo, you have to convince someone that he's captured to face their sadness, because the whole point is for them to for him to get rid of their sadness by forcing them to be happy and content the entire time. So if you make a victim confront it, it kills him. And I was like, but no one's escaped the tent, so how do you know?
That's a really interesting lore, because it's like then the bigger his army grows, the more vulnerable he gets, because there's more people you can convince. I knew that when they were talking to the child, that they knew if they broke the spell, he would get out and Limbo would get weaker. I didn't think that poor clown was just going to turn into dust and then melt in front of everyone. I was like, whoa, this escalated quickly. But no, I to your point, I completely agree. It was, they were trapped in a clown car while basically surrounded by the Walking Dead dressed like clowns. And then you had room for this really poignant moment in the middle of that. It all came together really, really nicely. But like, suspending your disbelief really paid off, because like that was a really nice moment.
It was. And pairing that with Ada's plot was interesting too. I'm not a supernatural watcher, so I don't know who Rowena is, but the acting was fine and I loved her accent.
Spooky poker, I was into it.
And it was we didn't get to see which kind yet, so to see Ada, who's usually confident, out of her element and a bit insecure and trying to prove herself, was interesting. I love that new layer to her character. And I really didn't like that they shamed her for being an earth witch, as she can kill you with a vine. Why are you mocking her for it?
Yeah, and it's, again, this is what really makes me wonder what we kind of missed throughout the season, because how many episodes have we gone without Ada? Have we even seen her since the mid-season premiere? a couple of weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like how is that a series regular character? I wish we kind of learned more about her, because she was kind of came across as like the veteran of the group, and now in this episode you saw that she felt inexperienced. She wasn't confident in herself, and that's a lot of rich stuff to work with. And now we learn that she may be the MVP to defeating the Akrita, and you're like, that's a big reach in a couple of episodes, but I mean, we'll roll with it because I really like the character of Ada. But I just wish we got to spend a little more time with those, because that's a really interesting character arc for her.
If this had been a 22 episode season, she probably would have been absent for like 4 episodes. Then we would have gotten maybe like an Ada standalone episode where we see what she had been up to, and it would have just been her episode. And it would have, it would have worked a little bit better than just like tossing her back in. And we're like, oh, you're back. Okay. Like I have been worried about her for 4 weeks, but no news is good news, I guess. They haven't mentioned her. So I was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I think if they had more time, it would have worked a little bit better. Because I don't think in a 13 episode season you can take John and Mary out of the equation and just focus on a supporting character. I don't think you can do that with this few episodes.
It would have been like a major risk, even though the way they balanced it this episode, they probably could have had her at least be the B plot in one of the episodes. Especially because when they bring her back, we're hitting the ground running. I mean, by the end of the episode, she's got a whole, I might have to sacrifice a piece of myself in order to stop the Akrita. And I was like, whoa, girl, we just got you back.
I know, it's a lot to care about all at once.
Yeah. But I do care about it though. Like I'm interested to see where we go in the finale, and whether or not she actually will end up using the stone she was given. I will say, and I know we said this last pod, the dean of it all. Like I get why he wasn't in this episode, but like they had alluded that they were on the hunt for him. And then we just didn't deal with him at all. And we had this really big clown pot. And so now, are we dealing with him in the finale? Is he still in the photos? Like, that's what I want to know.
It's interesting because it feels like Ada's kind of become the MVP or the secret weapon to destroying the Akrita, and that's what they were kind of building Dean up to be. So I hope it's not the case of that Ada gets 3/4 through her plan and she can't complete it or whatever, and then Dean shows up and saves the day in the last few minutes. Because if they were going to do that, I wish they hadn't like taken us by the hand to that point, because now we know something's going to happen with Dean in the finale, because they set us up with the photos. They were talking about it at the start of this episode and then completely shifted gears. He wasn't mentioned again. If he just shows up in the finale now, it's going to feel like a bit of a letdown because we knew it was going to happen to begin with. Whereas I wish they would have just dropped that subplot altogether and then surprised us with it in the finale, if that makes sense. Or just let Ada shine, because we don't know what she's been up to. Like, show us how strong she actually is. I think that would have been a better send-off. I'm not going to judge beforehand, but I just feel like there's been so much happening. I'm really excited to see how it ends because of how strong this episode was. I just hope they don't have too much to work with in only 40 minutes.
I hope so. I mean, it looks like it's based on the promo. It looks like it's going to be exciting. And if I'm correct, we saw John in uniform, so maybe we're flashing back to when he's given the letter about his dad's secret life. But I don't know. I mean, it is going to be. I hope they stick their landing. I feel like if they stick their landing, this whole season, viewing wise, would have been really worth it. To have felt like you'd been on this journey with them, and it had struggles, but there were a lot of high moments too, and I would want a season 2.
Yeah, this is the episode that I was like, you know what? Season 2, I'm back in.
Right?
Because for a while I was like, I'd be okay if it ended after one season. It would suck because I love this cast, but like this episode, I was like, no, they still got gas in the tank. Let's let's give them a shot.
Yeah. So I mean, if CW doesn't want them, shop it.
Yeah.
Just shop the show. I feel like it could find a home somewhere, even with low viewership. Because to be fair to the other CW shows, low viewership is the name of the game. Even the golf is suffering. So.
And these shows are remarkable worldwide. I feel like a Supernatural spin-off would be. So manifesting a season 2, even if it's a season full of filler episodes, because if they're anything like that one, I'd take it.
I know. So Mo, you have your orders. Well, at least you have a bullet point. Wait for more bullet points, just but as for speaking of episodes that sort of redeemed a season, The Flash, episode 4. Michael, I'll let you start.
I mean, you think I'm going to start talking about the Red Death, but nobody wants to talk about the Red Death. We need to talk about the main event of the storyline. Baby Jenna is back. We have not seen that child in 5 years, but she is back. No, I'm kidding.
Who?
Baby Jenna, Joe and Cecile's child, who showed up as a baby like 5 seasons ago, and they talk about her all the time. Now that baby has turned into a fully grown child, and like it all happened off screen. Baby
You know
Jenna
what?
finally showed up.
Let me mind my business. You guys
Yeah.
talk.
Well, Jenna's probably like what, preschool age? We're at
Yeah.
preschool, if not going to kindergarten at this point. Surprise.
We'll get to that, don't worry. But wow. So fine, so happy to finally have an episode focusing solely on the Red Death. Javicia Leslie, oh my goodness, what a performance. It's great to get to first of all know more about this villain, because I feel like next week's going to be the last time we see her. I don't like these graphic novels. I want full season stories. And I feel like they're finally hitting the ground running with the storyline, and now we're going to lose it next week. But my oh my, did they hit the ground running with this episode. Arguably the best episode of the season. It depends on whether you like the fun of the premiere or the more serious side in this storyline, so we let you make that choice. The two episodes in between do not compare to the first and the fourth, but what an excellent episode. It was just great to finally learn more about the villain. We finally learned, I like how they adapted the storyline so that this version of the Red Death is very much like the comic book version. They wanted to destroy their villains once and for all. However, they started using the Flash's super speed to preempt when they were going to be villains. So if they made so much as one bad decision, they toss them in Iron Heights so they never get the chance to turn into a villain, which that's not fair. You're robbing people of their futures. So that made total sense why this version of Batwoman, the Red Death, in her timeline, she's from a different timeline, Reed, by the way. We finally learned that she's not from a different Earth. She's from
Jenna?
a different timeline. No, it should be the Red Death.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to follow. Okay, continue.
There's too much going on.
That would be a plot twist, though.
That's why Jen is the main event of the story. No, but she's the Red Death is from a different timeline, and Barry in her timeline tried to stop her from stealing his speed and putting villains in prison before they'd done anything wrong. And according to the Red Death, she was best friends with Iris, and when the Flash turned on her, she tried to throw a lightning bolt to stop him, and the lightning bolt killed Iris instead. So in this episode, the Red Death has shown up at our Iris's front door and is trying to appeal to her to get Barry to give her his lightning so that she can use the cosmic treadmill to open a breach back to her timeline so she can go back.
Cosmic Treadmill's a really good band name. Sorry, I just.
Oh my goodness! Wow, from Windy and the Winchesters of the Cosmic Treadmill. But yeah, I have to say I've talked too much explaining, but the point is, there was a lot of storyline in this episode, and I feel like they had to make up for how slow the story's been moving up until this point. But we really got it in this episode, and I'm really glad we did. And I also, as a lifelong Batman fan, I just want to say they've turned the Red Death into a walking Batman one-liner, and you know, I'm here for it. Last week she said Robert Pattinson's "I am vengeance." This week she said the Batman the Animated Series is "I am vengeance, I am the night," and then instead of "I am Batman," she said "I am the Red Death." And my personal favorite, when Iris decided not to help her, she said the iconic Michael Keaton line from Batman '89: "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts." And oh my goodness,
I know Michael turned into that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he was like pointing at the screen.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh, I tell you, I
They
was
did
so
that
happy.
just for you.
They did, and it was followed by such an epic suit up of the Red Death because, oh Sabrina, we have to talk about the scene where the Red Death armor took its helmet off and there was no head there.
I wasn't ready.
That's
not what I thought when they were gonna. I thought he was gonna get Ryan, and then it's like, no, she's like the headless horseman out here.
Yeah.
This is nothing in that suit.
Throughout the whole scene, I was like, "Where's the head? Where's the head?"
So great. I personally think this is my favorite episode. And I would rank the season opener as the second. I think that might just have to do with there's a little bit more action in the scene. I think the plots were more balanced for everybody, if that makes sense. But also it's just because Javicia Leslie was having an absolute time, like she was living her best life. as a supervillain. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, parts of it were like, and I was like, but that's the point. She is supposed to be unhinged. And so the further we get into the episode, the more like chaotic she gets. And it's just, I'm willing to go on a ride with her with this. I mean, she was screaming and her body was flailing. She had the big, when she said, let's go nuts, her eyes got wide. And then we had the armor scene. She truly was. I didn't buy her story that she was selling to Iris at all, and neither did Iris, of course. But Ryan was giving it her all.
Neither did Iris, of course. That killed me. You said it like you and Iris are like talked about it. You're like, we don't know. I love it. Wait, I have a question. Is this her only episode, Javicia?
Just next week.
Next week as well.
Oh, fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's definitely gonna be fun. So like when I mean that she's unhinged, it's that like, so this woman shows up on Iris's doorstep like with a little scar, like, I got cut. Can you bandage me up? And like she's trying to sell this story that she had been basically robbed by the Red Death out in the Palisades, and she had to drive back to Gotham, and then had to drive to Star City. And Iris is sitting there like, so you got jacked for all your stuff. You came all the way here instead of checking in with your team to tell me about a villain who jacked all your stuff. Why are you here? And so when she opens, and she's like, she's telling the story, she's giving it, and then she made her fatal mistake is when she opens the fridge and gets some creamer, because Iris knows Ryan's never been in this house, so why is she so comfortable just going in there and getting creamer out my fridge? She's not that type of person. So just feel like, I've never been here, but let me just raid your fridge or something. Like, that's not who Ryan is. So that's when they have their moment, and Iris goes get the gun because she stays ready all the time.
Oh yeah.
But I will say, Ryan did hand it to her though. After they got through their story, she it's like a hair shoulder twist thing, and she just shoves her to the floor. And I was like, oh, but I wanted to see them fight. They did not do that, but I wanted to see some hand-to-hand combat in the middle of the apartment. But I love Candace Patton and Javicia Leslie together in this scene. They're so dynamic, and I think it really worked that this Iris has a friendly rapport with Ryan, but not a best friendship. So she's able to see the holes in the story that Ryan is giving. And I will say, stop killing Iris. There's always an Iris who dies. Right. And this is another one who dies. So I really appreciated what this episode had to offer, even if I don't really care about Mark and his potential death.
No, I mean, I'm glad Chilblain tried to redeem himself a little bit. My favorite part of his whole redemption arc was when Captain Boomerang was like, no, let's not kill the Flash. Instead, let's find out who he is under that mask. I'm like 9 seasons in.
Wait, no one knows who the Flash is?
Well, Captain Boomerang doesn't because he's a bad guy.
Okay.
But that's what I like, that because you would have seen that in the old 60s Batman show. You would have seen that in any time. We're 9 seasons in here, and the fact that the Flash's true identity might be revealed has stakes. It shouldn't have stakes because Barry's out here telling everybody under the sun who he really is. But like, it had some stakes. But Chilblain stepped up, even though he's working with the bad guys. He was like, oh, I wouldn't touch his Kyle because you'll get 50,000 volts and be fried to death. So he stepped up for Barry in that moment, and that's when Barry seen that he did have some potential. He was worth saving. And in the end, he did. He overpowered the cosmic treadmill when the Red Death tried to get the Flash to use it. So all the energy came back into the Red Death. So the Red Death can't get home. So in the end of the episode, she went crazy, and we think Chilblain died. He didn't, but we think Chilblain died because he sacrificed himself to get Barry home. Oh, and also the rest of the rogues turned up. We got to see the Hotness, we got to see Goldface, we got to see Pied Piper. They showed up just to save the Flash and bring him home. They had no purpose in this episode other than that. So the whole Rogue War thing is carrying on, but they had a little bit of gravity for Mark's potential death. They said, I like that Barry was like, I'm trying to appeal to the Red Death's sense of justice and be like, oh, you're a good person underneath that mask, even though I don't know who you are. That was a bit like, been there, done that before. But I get the fact that he tried to, that he was worried about Mark, because Mark did have potential, and then he turned himself into the bad guy.
Chilblain?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I believe
I
his
don't know
name.
why I assumed that Chillblain's name was like Blaine.
Yeah, that's a surname, I think.
Chillblaine is his last name?
No, Blaine is a surname.
Oh.
Mark Blaine.
You guys gotta let me stop asking questions.
I forgot that until the Red Death referred to him as Blaine last night. I was like, oh, now I get it. But yeah, speaking of Chillblaine's death, the Chillagra moment afterwards.
Cringy.
No, yeah.
It seems like they try to shoehorn some of these things into
Oh,
episodes where they don't need to, like, they could have sat on the bench for a week.
Michael, let
No
him know
one,
what
like,
happened.
no one come for me, but that's just an outsider's perspective.
No, everyone agrees. Michael, please tell him what happened, what she did after she felt this man was dead.
So Allegra's the one who can like teleport. So they showed up to the place, got the flash, and teleported back right as Chillblaine was being killed in front of them. So Allegra was pretty scarred that she had to do that. And then she decided to go over to Chester, who was sitting at his chair doing whatever it is Chester does. And she said they've been ignoring each other ever since they kissed in the premiere, apparently. And she said, now I'm finally ready to talk about how we feel. You know, Mark's death just reminded me, like tears in her eyes because she just watched a man die. Mark's death just reminded me that we don't have so much time. So now's the time to like, let's talk about us, with the biggest smile on her face. And then even Chester, who was pretty heartbroken, was like, and then it said, and it was like, no, we can't do this right now. It's the wrong time to do this. We need to stop the Red Death. We need to grieve Mark. And then afterwards, we'll talk about it. And I mean, that's probably the right response. It felt completely out of place. And I think that was the second to last scene before the credits rolled. And I'm like, we're doing a part one here about the Red Death. And this is what we're giving us. No, that wasn't necessary at all. I don't mind Chester and Allegra. I did kind of like smile when they finally got together in the first episode, but now we're going to do a full season of that was a mistake before they inevitably end up together again. So they're going around in circles here.
It seems early to make that kind of like YOLO move.
Well, I don't think they also really shouldn't be able, won't they? Because they've been one for a full season now. So there was really no need for them to do that. I also thought that it detracted from the very heavy-handed message that they had in the episode, which is that everyone's life has value. And there is always a possibility to redeem yourself and get a second chance, even if that results in your potential death. I did get that was the message. I feel like it's clunky, right? Like the Barry doesn't always need to be, I can save you through the power of positivity. Like we don't need to do that all the time. I get why it was in this episode, but I think it's also, it sort of cheapens the work that some of the criminals and villains have already done to better themselves by being like, Frost tried to kill me, but people make mistakes. And I'm just like, that's not a mistake, Barry. People make choices, they make bad decisions, and then they regret those choices. That is what happened with Frost. She regretted the person that she was, and she made measures to be a better person. Again, there's work in that. It can't just be, I told you can be a good person, therefore you are. Right? Mm-hmm. There has to be inspiration for it, and I think that's what worked well for Mark's arc. Not that I felt bad for him. I did think Hartley was a real one. He was like, we have to go. And he just pulled them all away so they could go back to the Flash lab. And like, that was a real decision. I think the Flash has done this before, as far as like, no, they don't want to leave a person behind. But sometimes you have to recognize you have to. Mm-hmm. And I wanted them to sort of deal with the weight of that, but they didn't, because we had Chillagra things to do.
Wait, these themes kind of seem similar to Walker Independence, not to like change the subject, but like you just said two things. I was like, that's like Walker Independence. And then you said the other thing. I was like, that's like Walker Independence too.
Yes, but Wendy does it better. Wendy is less clunky. Wendy lets Wendy lets the episodes grow and the characters take their time as they develop, rather than first episode, I'm redeemed, I'm new.
Oh, it's funny because it's true.
But last point about the Flash, Michael, did you feel like they resolved the Joe plot? Do we feel like he's settled? That the Jenna almost getting hit by the stray speed lightning bolt was in Cecile being able to save their daughter and then rushing to go save everybody else out on the street, that was the end of his story, or was he just appeasing Cecile and we're going to get at least one more Joe freak out before Jesse L. Martin's time is done?
Yeah, we think he's only going to have 5 episodes and he's been in 3 so far. So how are they going to write Joe out? Maybe will he decide that it's his problem, so he needs to leave? I don't know. I saw the mechanics in that storyline. You knew as soon as Cecile was there to protect their daughter, Joe was either going to be like, say the city isn't safe, or he was going to be like, you're a hero, we are safe with you. Clearly it was the latter. I feel like it's a predictable outcome, but it was also a little unpredictable because I genuinely thought they were going to write Joe out here. Something's going to have to happen because they said they were coming up with a storyline to write him out because he's only going to be in like 5 episodes. I think we know he's going to be back in the series finale. So does that mean he's only going to be in 1 more episode between now and then? How are they going to keep Joe off screen for that long? So, I mean, it was fine. Again, I think the acting between them two carries that storyline for me because I don't necessarily see it as it from a story standpoint, but it's great performances from Jesse L. Martin and Danielle Nicolet in that scene. And I have to say that I prefer Cecile when she does serious stuff. I'm glad we're doing more of that because I felt her emotions in that scene. It was pretty cool seeing her stop the glass and being all 11 about it. I know based on Jenna's drawing, I know Cecile is going to end up getting a suit and be the hero by the end of the season. And I feel like that's probably the point of this arc, but I don't know how they're going to write Jesse L. Martin out at this point because he's only 1 more episode between now and the finale. So what's going to happen? Is he going to be written out next week? Is he going to decide, I'm going to take the baby and go, you need to stay and be a hero? I don't know. It was fine. I like I said, I saw the mechanics at work. That's all I can really say about that.
I feel the same. I kind of want him to take Jenna and go. I kind of want him to make the same decision his ex-wife did. Though I think she was tossed out by him. But to decide that she was going to stay away, and that she needed to work on herself, and having Wally change her perspective on life, even if it meant like abandoning Joe and Iris. I kind of want him to be on the other side of a choice like that. And see what it means, and why you would choose to protect your child in that way, and how it's difficult to go back the longer that you're away. I don't know. I just wanted there to be stakes in Jesse's last storyline, and there would only really be stakes if Joe makes the choice that's controversial, the choice that's hurtful, and then Cecile has to deal with that the rest of the season until they bring him back.
That makes total sense. And it would be a serious storyline for her as well. I don't know. I didn't mind it, but it's not my favorite storyline for either one of them.
No, not at all. But, still great episode. Even with that
Awesome
storyline.
We're moving in the right direction.
They are moving in the right direction. I mean, they have to. It's the final season. Like, you got to give us something.
Get there eventually.
Get there eventually. But to circle back to Wendy, the show of this television season that we just truly, truly adore. How did we feel about this little anthology they gave us for the characters?
I loved it. Like I think some shows, everyone loves a good flashback origin story. Not everybody can pull it off. This was true. Masterful, in my opinion.
Without a doubt. And the fact that this is interesting that the Winchesters at Wendy had like such a standalone episode as this penultimate one, but like the fact that there were such high stakes at the beginning of this episode and obviously at the end of the last one, leading right into that. And I love the transition then just as it went into the flashback, as Gus went into the barn, and you were like, I didn't annoy me in the slightest because you were instantly then into like the origins of these character stories. And it was such like an island in the middle of everything else going on. And I didn't really mind that we weren't going to get the continuation. Of course, we did get some continuation at the end, so that was a bit of a gift at that point. But like learning about Kate and Callian and Gus and their origins is something we never thought we'd see, because this story, Walker Independence, has been independence through Abby's eyes, and this was a completely different spin on it, and an excellent one at that.
And I think it works as the penultimate too, because we've spent so much time caring for we've gotten to know these characters. We care about them. If they had tried to do this in like episode 5, it's like, okay, we don't really care about most of them at this point to really be invested in how they all landed here and how their dynamics all came into play. Like it works as like the the extra little like, here's some details you need before getting into this finale. I think it worked really well.
Yeah, and it did need to be towards the end because of the way that we're introduced to these backstories through Gus's letters to his late wife. And I think you're right. If it had been like episode 5, as much as we had cared about Gus at that point, it doesn't give the same weight as when we had learned in the episode when Callie went to go see his sister that Gus had lost his wife, and then they made us wait, and they brought the ghost of her, the absence of her, back to give this really emotional story of him basically having to walk away from the life that he knew. Not only when he had left the Buffalo Soldiers, but like his excitement about writing to his family, right? That he was on this new Western adventure. I think he wanted to send for them, right? And then to find out that he was not going to be able to do that, and then to have to reinvent himself the way that everybody else reinvents themselves in Independence. I was like, oh, because I already loved you, but I love you even more now. And how heartbreaking that is, and how everybody's story has a little bit of heartbreak in it. Like that's what sent them all running to Independence, or staying in Independence as far as Hoyt goes. I did not expect his mama to be a grifter, but I love that she's the grifter and that the hat he wears is hers.
That
That
was
was
such a
really
lovely.
yeah, it's so
Yeah.
touching. So we think, you know, we see Hoyt as, you know, who he is. He's like this bad boy renegade, like happy-go-lucky, nothing really gets to him. And then we see what kind of help made him what he's been maybe running from a little bit.
Mhm.
The vulnerability, the scared little boy that's inside of this like tough exterior. That was really great, I think, too.
Yeah, we learned more about what's driving him, and I've always said I love the fact that Hoyt was very much presented in the opening episodes as this kind of like outlaw who just kind of like got by, and he didn't have much of a conscience, but dare we say is one of the biggest hearts of anyone on the show. And you saw that's been teased as it's gone on, but now you really get to see it, how he ended up in that life, what drove him to it, and like what continues to drive him forward, his love for his mother, and just how that life, he loved life on the road. He loved life on the run. And I think obviously that shaped him so much that he never really got away from it. But the fact that he still feels like he's doing it for her in a way, we never really find out what happened to her. I don't believe, or like the outcome of that. So it made it all the more poignant because we've all kind of cared about Hoyt, and he's kind of become like the butt of a lot of the jokes in the show. But there's some real powerful stuff driving him forward, and I really appreciated learning about it.
What
And
did we think of his scene with Jared? Can we talk about that, please?
he's funny in the fact that I think it was supposed to be funny, but it was also kind of yikes. Like at times, it's just really there so Jared can get a cameo.
Yeah, it was a little distracting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't dislike it. I thought it was fine. It was a little distracting though. I don't know if it added a whole bunch.
Mm. It was
No.
when you think of westerns, you think of shootouts, and I think when we thought of Hoyt at the beginning, we thought of shootouts. So I feel like this was the purpose of that show, as origin, that you have one of those like old fashioned western shootouts. Who's going to fire first and who's going to fall? And I mean, it did exactly what it said on the tin. I don't know if it did anything else for the episode, but
Is it, well, I guess, is that the train he said that he had robbed? Because there's a train he keeps referencing in several different episodes in which he completed a heist and he's very proud of that. I wonder if that's the train, because they were there to supposedly work together, but Hoyt didn't trust him, and it was good he didn't. Turns out Jared's character was a lawman, so he was probably going to end up getting arrested anyway. I wonder if that is. I can't remember if that's the train he robbed, and so that was like a little, not like a little Easter egg, but a little callback to what Hoyt had been talking about.
Yeah, that's true. The you look familiar, or like I feel like I've seen you before line was a little bit okay. We know. He looks familiar. I was kind of disappointed that it didn't add to like I was really, you know me, I was looking forward to the How I Met Your Great 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 Grandfather's arc, and I was like, oh, I was so excited when they had Jared in the preview, and I was like, oh, we're gonna get some like a new layer, and we did not. But I mean, that's fine. I don't mind. That's fine. The story
You know,
continues.
it'd be funny though if they decide, like, say they get a season 2 or later down the line or something. Turns out that lawman had a twin.
Or he didn't die or something.
Yeah. And that's how we get the answer to who Abby's baby daddy is. But one thing I like about Hoyt also is his loyalty, because his relationship with Kai is so sweet. Where he just pops in and I think he gives him money, right? And then he asks him, like, do you know how to make a preacher's outfit? And I was like, haha, the job that he is about to like nearly die over. I love the little seeds into the pilot episode when we had met everybody. But I do have to say, why is the ticket to this town everyone has to experience loss of a loved one? Because I think every single one of them lost somebody they loved.
I guess that's what brings them together in this community, or at least these 5, 6 people. I don't know. That's what I guess bands them together. But even these kinds of episodes, I feel like they can be retroactive. Like, they're like, oh, we need to make an origin story, so let's kind of like piece all these things together that we've already written. And it felt very natural, like they could have put this episode like in front of the pilot, and like they had planned this, like they knew how these characters got here. It wasn't just like, oh, let's go back in time and fabricate a story of how Kate got here. Like, it was very much already ingrained in the story.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about it. It was very much a flashback episode, so that you saw the characters' origin stories, but about midway through it turned into a pilot origin story, and that you saw the seeds being led as to how we got closer to the pilot, because of course we learned what was the other story? Oh yeah, of course, Tom. We
talk about his origin. That was like the most shocking one, and I was like, okay, the fans must have been going feral, like, baby girl, like, there he is. I know, I was like, oh, the whole season we've like, please do not make me like Tom, and then they were just like, he's been the sweet one this whole time.
He's like, so down bad for Abby. Like,
is this the reveal that he's known who she is the entire time? Is this the reveal? Oh, frustrating in a good way, but I was just like screaming the whole time.
Yeah, I know, because it's like she's so he doesn't know by the signs of things that she's investigating him, but he knew she was lying to keep her secret. And when they found the fake Mary Collins body, he was happy to go along with it and confirm that, so that they could move on from that story. So has he been protecting her the whole time, just like he was protecting her in the pre-pilot?
Maybe. I mean, he's such a romantic, though. The man fell in love by hearing her first. He liked how feisty she got about not wanting to leave her stuff behind. And then he saw her face, and then he saw like the items that she had. I think he picked up a Jules Verne novel. Was that 80 Days Around the World?
Yeah.
And then he was flipping through, and he like earmarked a page, and I was like, oh no, he's gonna be gone so fast. He likes her too fast, too quickly, and then he's just like a stalker, watching her and falling even more in love. And then of course his little brother has to say something about it, which Shane was like that feral child who just won't like let things go. He's like, if you're not gonna do it, then I'll do it. I was like, you're not the brains of this operation. Please stay by the campfire.
But we still don't know who pulled the trigger, right?
We don't. The show refuses to tell us. I think it's gonna probably end up being Tom. I think they want us to fall in love with the idea of him and Abby, and then snatch it all away.
If I recall the pilot correctly, someone shot Liam and then had very bad misdirection when it came to Abby, is because they like shot around her multiple times or whatever, and obviously didn't kill her. And it makes me wonder if Tom was doing the job but intentionally trying not to kill Abby, if you know what I mean. Because I feel like now he's turned from like serious villain into potentially a misguided hero who actually is the villain of the piece, so that he still followed through and killed Liam, but he may not. You know what I mean? He was assigned to kill Abby as well, but maybe he didn't. So it's going to be very interesting, because I believe at the end of the last episode, was it not the brother who shouted he's the killer? So we still don't know. There's still an awful lot of misdirection here. But then at the end, they just left poor Gus, who potentially, is he dead? Is he alive?
He better not be, or I'm
I know. I hope not. I hope he's not dead.
I don't think he will be, but I hope not. That's all I have to say.
I think he's hanging on for dear life. But like, I mean, that's what I would hope. it made me, I was live tweeting, so like when I had just said that I was invested in this dark romance, like I wanted to work out even if he did kill Liam, and then that happened with Gus, and I was like, I take it back. If Gus dies, I take it all the way back. But I think someone has to remember poor Gus. Someone's got to save him from that barn and
Probably
help him.
Callian. Full
Yeah,
circle
maybe
moment.
he was out there and heard the gunfire. We can hope.
Oh, I hope so. I really do. Because I think there's just the way that all these characters care about one another is just amazing, and it would make sense for it suddenly be like Pistols at Dawn over Tom because of Gus and because of what Abby found in the cabin.
And that the preview for the finale is giving that. Like we have Callian on a roof, this arrow, and we've got Abby going full like I don't even know. She's got a gun.
She does, and she is ready to tear in to Tom, and I'm ready.
If the whole 42 minutes is just that, I think it would be the most gripping episode of television of the year.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, The Last of Us, but
no, I can't argue with that in the slightest. I said the show feels like it's heading towards a big showdown, and that's one of the most masterful things it's done. Never has it felt like it's wasted a moment, and that generally might have made the show a little bit slower moving, but I feel like the payoff will be worth it. The show has never once let me down, and I don't feel like it's going to do that in the finale. I'm not ready for it to end, but at the same time, I can't wait to see how the season does. Season, I said, not series.
I know, because there's still so much with these characters. I still know they gave us glimpses of what happened with Kate in Baltimore, but there wasn't a lot there. We just know that she lost someone that she cared for, and that's not her running here, and that's how she met Hagen and how she found a home with the girls here, the dancers. So I'm like, okay, but I'm not done with Kate. I'm not done with Hoyt. I'm not done with Abby. I'm not even done with Tom. Like, or Gus or Callian. Like, we can't leave Independence yet. Like, CW don't make us leave.
Definitely not.
I'm putting down permanent residence in Independence.
But the good thing is that we do have like a bit of news. The showrunner did say that, you know, he's like, I can't talk about it, but we have options. So they will shop it.
It does seem more viable. I know everybody wanted the 11 shows that got canceled last year to find a new home, but it seems more viable for a first season show to find a new home. It seems cheaper, at least in my mind. So it does seem like there's a little bit more hope for these at least 2 shows.
True. Well, and they built the stage for Independence. Like everything is like literally there in Santa Fe. Already paid for.
Manifesting a season 2.
And 4 and 3.
All of it. But moving to Horseshoe Bay, we did a double.
This is what I've been waiting for.
The
whole episode has been leading toward this for me.
We made you wet, but we're here.
You go first.
I don't. Where do we begin? These are. I know every week I just start with like I love the show. It's just we have Nancy going just tunnel visioned on getting Everett and bringing him down so much so that she's kidnapped him in Lucy Saple's house.
Full circle.
Yes.
She's like, I'm taking you to the scene of the crime, my man. And she is just dead set.
And she had time for an impeccable outfit too. She really she's exceptional. And I was like, you look so good. And I'm also so scared of you right now. And Everett should be too. I like that the two, Kennedy McMahon, I'm sorry, I don't know Everett's actor's name, but the two of them were just masterclass.
On fire.
Just trading off of one another. It was just like, I just cannot care for Everett. But like, he's such a delicious villain. Like he just, like even rumpled and bruised and looking at his granddaughter, who we just learned that's his granddaughter. That man acts as if he's on a throne and he doesn't have cuffs on.
So steely, giving her nothing, no emotionless. He learned his wife died and he's like, I didn't do it. And it's like, can you show some shred of emotion, guy? Like, what's happening?
And it's like, he did not have control in that situation, and yet he conducted himself and Nancy as though he did have control of the situation. Absolutely glorious moment when she said, I'm not, what was it? I'll take your silence as a yes. And then he threw that back at her a few moments later. I was like, oh, he knows how to get himself out of this
Oh
situation,
yeah, was
even
that
though he
when she
physically
stopped the
couldn't.
recording?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She gave up because she's like the Nancy Drew approach, or is it the Nancy Drew approach? Can we call it that? She went into darker territory. Whatever kind of route she was going was not working on him. He was a different kind of evil than the supernatural threat she's dealt with, and she didn't know how to burrow through that. And I just thought that was like you said, the dynamic between the two of them, the back and forth, that made that scene so rewatchable, dare I say, because there was no getting out of it for either one of them, and yet they were happy to trade blows there.
The aspect of the story that I loved so much, there was so much going on. It was so wrought, but she leans on both of her dads in different ways. That was so heartwarming to me. Like, she and Ryan are building this relationship seemingly as friends. Like, they're building a friendship, and he can help her in ways that she can't really go to Carson with. But when it's all said and done, and not to fast forward too much, but when it's all said and done and she does see Carson, that's when she crumbles. That's she once again feels really safe with Carson, and she can be vulnerable and cry and open up to him. And I loved that scene so much, because we've been working toward that, I think, the whole season, and there is more payoff in the finale, but not we'll get there. But that was another aspect where she came up with that plan with Ryan, and we find out at the end where, you know, what we saw, as always with the show, what we see is not the whole story, because, you know, Nancy's a sly girl. But I loved seeing that partnership with, outside of her friend group for this episode. She was, you know, partnered with Ryan. I think that was another big payoff that we needed from her arc this season.
And it was an interesting switch, because if I recall correctly, in the episode beforehand, wasn't Ryan on the other side, because the two of them were investigating the same storyline together, but separately in their own ways. So it was said a lot that Ryan was the one that tracked her down. He knew her better than she thought, because he was able to track her down to Lucy Sable's house. And I totally agree. I feel like they're starting to build. She's recognizing Ryan as her father, but she will always see Carson as her dad. And I just think that the dynamic, the separate dynamics between the two of them is just amazing. But also on top of that, I can't remember if we saw it much in this episode. I don't think we did, so I'll save it the discussion for the next episode when we get into it. But the relationship between Carson and Ryan is starting to really blossom as well. They both have the shared goal of looking after Nancy, and I just think that all three sides of that triangle is coming together lovely in this finale. Let's just call it a double finale, because it felt like one episode went into the next. It was just every episode spills from one into the other, and I feel like Nancy's coherent storytelling has never faltered, and certainly wasn't the case in these episodes.
I think that with Ryan and Nancy, what's great about the way that this starts for the two of them at the back of the season is that the connection is grief. If they're like, Celia dies, and there are two people that love her enough to go after Everett. Like that, to know that it is that her death has weight. Like, there were people that cared about her, and I think to allow ferocity in that, right? Like, Ryan comes in angry, fist flying. Like, it's a visceral reaction, and it's the same like reaction that Nancy has to learning what she thinks is that Everett killed her grandmother. That we, instead of fist, it's a taser. But the first reaction is violence, and I think that is a natural reaction, which is why I think when they reveal, is it in this episode or is it in the next one? But about the wraith, I didn't like that the wraith was the reason they were giving for a lot of her behavior, and I was like, no, because she went through a lot. She could still have these feelings. It didn't have to be implied that it was the wraith. Even with the tasing, I was like, I accepted it. She went to the dark side. She was traumatized and she had grief. I get it. But it gives reason to, I guess they were trying to lend reason to Nancy acting out of character. And I was like, well, grief will have you do that. A supernatural being doesn't have to.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily need a separate reason for Nancy's behavior. And I also would be interested in someday rewatching with this knowledge to kind of see if, like we just talked about with Wendy, like, was this a retroactive decision? Was this like another thing they were just like, oh, that would be a really good way to tie up the stories, to have this thing from the beginning have like been attached to her all season and kind of took her down this road. but I want to see if there were hints, because they showed us the montage of like
Mm.
moments where the wraith like intervened in her behavior. But I would just be so interested to go back to see if, like, as a viewer, did we miss those moments? Were there like hints of them, or was that just like a convenient like way to tie it together? I'm not, no judgment either way. Like, it worked for me, as much as I was like, yeah, we didn't really need it, but like, cool. That's another way of putting it. Um, it did feel super similar in a way to what George has been going through, so it's kind of like another one. But the stakes were a lot more dire, much more quickly with the wraith.
Mm. I know, I agree. I feel like from a character standpoint, Nancy's always had a bit of a she's walked that morally grey area where she's maybe made some decisions that were questionable and then realized and learned from it. So it's quite interesting that now we have a reason for why her latest batch of morally questionable decisions. It kind of works because she did make a lot of progress, and then throughout the season you kind of see now, looking back, she did start regressing and make more questionable decisions. Because like for example, people were talking her out of her relationship with Gil, and yet she always reached out to him when she needed something dark done because she knew he wouldn't question that. That kind of encouraged that. So yeah, it does feel like there could have been a bit of retroactive rewriting done, but at the same time, I think the storyline was moving in the right direction, that they got away with it. And then the montage, I was surprised they did that. I was like, oh, that's pretty clever when you saw it, because there were a lot of instances throughout the season that they showed. So it came together nicely, even if it wasn't necessary, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I do like the fact that it became about the wraith, not solely, I didn't like that, but this, I feel like the finale, or the setup of the finale, gave it a very like Buffy-esque quality, because if I recall correctly, I think season 4 of Buffy had a season-long story and then wrapped that up in the penultimate episode, and then a season finale was very much like standalone but like show oriented. That's what this felt like. It was like the Everett story, the Hudson story, was very much the main story of the season, and they practically wrapped that up in the penultimate episode. So they gave Nancy a reason to need to deal with her feelings by making it a supernatural thing that they can deal with in a standalone episode. But it wasn't completely standalone, because it tied back to, was that the premiere or the actual premiere where the wraith showed up? I can't remember.
It was season 2 premiere. They
It
were in
was
the woods.
so they tied it in very, very well, especially since that wasn't supposed to be the original premiere because of the pandemic. So they tied it back very, very well. The start of season 2 led right through to the end of season 2. I think it all came together really nicely, and I appreciated what they did, because we always say Nancy tries something different, and this was very, very different compared to what it had done so far.
It's funny that you mentioned the Buffy comparison, because that's a thought that I had watching these episodes. I was like, people have always compared the show to Riverdale, and it might have some of the same like visuals. It's northeastern small town, like it looks very stuck in a certain time period when the town like became like a lot of trauma in these towns, and they're stuck in that time period. They look very like a little bit older, like Riverdale's like got that 50s motif, and Nancy's got a, I don't know, whatever it is.
The
It just looks a little bit,
70s.
yeah, a little
Mhm.
like a they're stuck in the 80s a little bit.
Mhm.
Less so in the wardrobe, but more so, I'm way off task. What was I even saying?
The set
Buffy.
protection, but
Buffy. I was like, this reminds me of like Buffy, and also like Stranger Things a little bit. Like these episodes went really like above and beyond to what I think they had in the past. Like it was like she went full upside down, not to get into the finale already, but it's funny that you mentioned Buffy, because that was something I was picking up on in these episodes.
I think we can scoot into the finale and just hop back to episode 17 things when we need to, because I feel like it is, Michael's right, they are sort of like a two-parter. It all kind of works together, even with the Hudson stuff being wrapped up. Well, the Hudson stuff was not wrapped up. Part 1 of the Hudson problems was wrapped up. Then she had a whole other ancestral problem going on. But I think that, like, I do see, I've never seen Buffy, so I can't speak to that one, but I do see the Stranger Things elements, particularly in the storytelling around Nancy's trauma and that umbilical cord and all the Nancy's past that they did. Which, by the way, that sequence, like, it reminded me of when she had to break free of the world she created, in which she and everybody else that she cared about was happy, but like turned up the dial even higher to her actually having to once again confront the trauma that she keeps pushing down. And I love that all of her friends show up in those moments, and they bring their history with them, and her history with them as well, into her having to confront her different moments in life that changed who she was as a person, that also made her kind of lose her identity as well.
It was like a traumatic Wizard of Oz, and I loved it. Like,
it's beautiful.
It was a great way for Nancy to understand, like, you can't do it alone, and all these people that you have in your life have played a part. And just her, I guess, conjuring them up, because I don't think they knew that happened, right?
No, they didn't.
I don't know. Her conjuring up, they each provide something in her life that's necessary, whether she recognizes it or not. And I knew Ace was going to be last. I knew he was going to be last.
This is a really emotional scene between the two of them too.
Yeah.
And the double entendre of her asking him to hold her. I mean, she means baby her, but like, oh, the shot around them when she hands him infant her, and they're just there, and their foreheads are together, and they're having a little romantic moment.
I just got chills because thinking about that line again, like discussing it out loud, when she asks him, "Can you hold me?" and he says, "I've been waiting for you to ask me that," or something. And it kind of like, he's always, I'm getting chills. I always get chills when I talk about the show. He's kind of always been there to hold her, to lift her up, to be there, but she's never asked. He's always just been there. So oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Like, that's so deep. Like, she's finally asking him to, can you be there can you hold me? Oh my God, I'm literally gonna cry. That's so
it's
intense.
Beautiful. It is.
It is.
Oh my God. But can we talk about the Nick one when she's in the grave? I feel like we had a commenter say that there was a moment or something, or I feel like once I saw it, I was like, oh, I feel like someone had told us about this, when she says that's why it hurt so much when you chose George. In my mind, I'm like, is that how it went down? Like, I feel like maybe that's not how it completely went down. But then I remembered, like, we're in deep in Nancy's psyche, where she's been like pushing things down. So maybe even if she didn't communicate fully, that's how it felt when Nick and George got together. Somewhere in her, that's how it felt, that he was, he's choosing George over her because, she can't provide what George can. So I had to really do a lot of work in that scene to really do some critical thinking. Not that it didn't work. Like, I think if you think about it, it really works. But I had to, like, I had to sit with that for a minute and be like, how did I feel about that in context and everything?
I feel like with them too, there's been a lot of like vague history, because like at the end of the day, we're going right back to the pilot for a dynamic that had been established before that. And he was there for her to help her get through a traumatic period of her life. But using is the wrong word, but she used the happiness she felt around him to get over that, but she never really treated him right. And I think that, if I recall correctly, when she noticed that and when she was finally ready to make it official, he was like, I can't do this anymore. So I think maybe that's why then she felt upset then that he was able to move on with George right around the time she was ready to give him what he needed, but she treated him wrong. So I feel like that was like kind of like a beautiful farewell to the like will they won't they dynamic with Nick, because we knew Nick's moved on and he's happy with George, but the show never really moved on from it. Whereas I feel like now that Nancy's ready to officially move on from it, that's kind of what that scene was. I agree with you, there was a lot of heaviness and powerful stuff in that one conversation that you probably need to sit with it for a couple of minutes or hours afterwards, knowing the show, just to fully digest it. But beautiful scene nonetheless.
Yeah, I love how they ended it.
I was like, I get to eat again. Like, it's really a tradition different. Yes, but I mean, like, I think it's a great metaphor for we keep doing metaphors for the end of the relationship, I think. But I think it is because it is difficult to let go of a future with somebody when you know that it would have worked had you been in the right frame to accept the love that they were giving and to give them the love they deserve back. And I think for Nancy, a fear of hers was losing Nick. Like, because she
says, thank you for still being my friend.
Yes, because she needs him in her life. They have the type of love that, regardless of what their relationship is, she needs him in her life, and she's willing to accept that in any capacity. Whatever he needs from her, which in this case it's friendship, to be a good friend to her, and for her to be a good friend to him, she will do it. And I think that was a way of, once again, sunsetting Drusen by literally putting her in a grave, right? We're literally in a graveyard as she moves forward. Oh, metaphor. She's in a graveyard with Nick, and she's putting her feelings away. She's exploring those feelings, and he is embracing her. She
climbing out of them
too. Out of the grave, and he's hugging her, and she thanks him for being her friend, and then for being her friend. And then we move to Ace, right? He's on a cliff where she was born. Life. We go from death to life. It's the end of relationship to the beginning of a new one. I think, God, I love these writers. But I mean, that's a way to not, I think there's a way to move her forward while paying respect to what her relationship with Nick was like, but allowing her to open up to what she's been repressing, which is her feelings for Ace. Which is why when she ends up on that doorstep and he's not there, I was like, oh, girl. Like,
no. I wanted him to, like, there was a part of me that wanted him to, like, I guess not leave Amanda, because that would be that's not an Ace thing to do. He wouldn't just leave her. But I don't know. I wanted it to somehow work out. I'm glad it didn't, because I guess it's better storytelling, just not because we want it doesn't mean we need it right away, we need to continue to work for this. But yeah, that was like, of course. But she got the cookies, and she has her dad's, which I thought that was another touching moment too.
Well, that, and Nate's got like one last crumb. He says, I think I left something behind. I said, yeah, that's Nancy. Follow the feeling.
You need to ditch your Bobsy. I've already canceled the Bobsy twins, by the way. Which hurt because I feel like they were really fun, but I was like, oh, Gil, you let me down. And Amanda, you just don't care about Ace.
No, she doesn't. I think that, like, I didn't like that. It was like, I was only in a relationship with you because of the wraith. I was like, that's not why she was in a relationship with him, but I'll just let the writing have that one. But I think it is true that part of the toxic element of their relationship is that he is controlling, and he can be verbally abusive.
Yeah.
And she let it slide because she was in a dark place herself. And he does that exact same thing to Amanda, but Amanda won't leave her relationship with her brother or put boundaries up between them. She doesn't know how to do that because she's never had to, which makes me feel like Ace and Amanda, y'all aren't going to be around for, because even though he prioritized her, and that's what she loved about that, she's not ready to be able to walk away from her brother in a healthy way. It's like, you're gonna get it for like maybe 2 days into that trip, and then Gil's gonna call, and she's gonna go right back to her Shubin.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Can we, not to like turn us in a completely different direction, but Odette's done, right? George is fine
For now. They still gotta remove her because she's only got 10 years to live. So they gotta get rid of
like
Odette.
So confusing to me. I kind of felt like they were like, let's just be done with this and let Odette like go into the depths of George and her I thought she was gonna be like, oh my gosh, my lifeline. And I also was like, is the kiss with Bess gonna like release like that's what Odette needed, is to like have love again, to be like just release. I was like, can we just like let Odette be gone? I thought that's what that was. I guess it wasn't fully. It had more weight for Bess, which I was not completely buying into, if I'm honest. But fine, everything else was great. We can have that be what it was. Like, I'm not gonna hold that against anybody. But I was expecting to see Odette like come out of George and just like evaporate into happiness in the afterlife.
It makes you wonder if that's going to become like an overall show arc, because with George's death's been foretold since the very first episode. It would be kind of poetic if it carries on now.
She better not die in the series finale.
Oh, we don't want that. No, that would be such a letdown. But I mean, like, now that Odette's in the background, I feel like it could end up taking a back seat and then come back up in the final season. And provided they overcome it and save George, I actually wouldn't mind that. I'm ready to move on from it so that she's not in instant trauma right now. But if it's something they want to bring back up towards the end so they can finally deal with that, it would be rather poetic that it's kind of like bookended both ends of the show. So I'm on board with that, provided it doesn't overwhelm George in season 3, because just had far too many near-death experiences for 2 seasons.
Yeah, now we've got Temperance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I enjoyed her. Not
She
that
seems
bathtub
fun.
full of blood, but she does seem, but she's gonna cause havoc, wreak havoc. It's
Yeah.
gonna be great. The way that that magic wall just drops down after she's like and just
The
puts her
effects in
hands
this
up on it.
episode were crazy.
They were
Mm,
amazing. There's practical and CGI, right? Because I feel like the tree was something that they built on
mm.
set that the
Mhm.
wraith was trapped in.
The umbilical cord
Oh,
corset
yes.
looked like it was whoever that stand-in was for Kennedy looked like she was in makeup for hours.
Right. No, it was so powerful. The whole thing, the whole like temperance part of it as well. And again, not to go back to Buffy, but the fact is, with Sabrina, one of the parts of Buffy is the reason these supernatural entities are attracted to Sunnydale is because there's something called the Hellmouth below it. And now it feels very much like Horseshoe Bay is the same kind of place. And we're learning more about it as we go on. There's something about it that draws all these creatures to it. And now temperance, it seems to be the source of Temperance's power, which is why the witches cut her off from it in the first place. But now the wall is down, she's back in there. So, and power outage in town, ghostly knocking on Nancy's door. So I feel like we're really heading into the supernatural territory in season 3, and I really can't wait to see what it is, especially since I feel like the town's going to become more of a character, and that's quite exciting.
It's gonna be a tight season 2, 13. Oh, it's gonna
Yeah.
be so good.
It's gonna, well, and that's why I'm glad that we waited till season 3 to do witches, because I feel like we had to do we had to do ghostly things first,
Yeah.
and
Build
then
up to
bring
it.
magic into the equation.
One of my hopes for season 3 too is I don't need a complete tonal shift. I just do want Nancy to have a bit of a lighter time because she's, she was through hell and back in season 2, and I don't want to see her suffer anymore from her past. Just as a fan, I care about her too much, and I'm like, at some point, we need to heal a little bit, and she just needs to, deal with other things a little bit. So I'm that's just my hope. I don't need like a complete like they don't need to go on like a cruise and like really go on vacation. I just need them to like, they all deserve a little, a deep breath
Yeah.
and to have a little easier time.
Hopefully that's what the setup is for why we went through this again with Nancy, because she does have that line about saying that she now has the ability to hold her trauma, and Ace tells her she always did, which again, the Ace was on point this episode.
I know it was all like off screen too, and I feel like maybe if you didn't have the subtitles on and saw like Ace was saying all these things, I mean, we probably know what his voice sounds like by now, but it was cute that it was always him saying that stuff.
It was, and he was always also really there supporting her. If we noticed, the blocking was amazing. Like, it's not that all of her friends are around her, but he was the only one who tended to be touching her.
Held her hand.
Yes, the whole time. So lovely. Such a great
I
ship.
love it.
What else? I think. Oh, to go back to her dad's, I loved that Nancy sent Carson on with Ryan because she recognized that Ryan needed a dad right now, and like his dad is trash. So like it's just to go help take care of him, and then that he's now teaching him how to do domestic things as like Nancy looks on fondly but also laughing.
That's really cute.
It's adorable. I to think about where we were in season 1 to where we land by the end of season 2, that is a journey.
Yeah. Hard fought.
Yeah, and we always said Ryan was that character who had potential for good, but always kind of leaned on the side of bad. He just needed those positive influences in his life, and I think he's finally found them.
He seems so well-intentioned. He just didn't have the tools in his upbringing to fully realize that. You're hindered by your circumstances, and while he had incredible luxuries, he didn't have the luxury of family, like a real family. And while, Nancy's like trying to reconcile her family situation, I think she recognizes like, I do have like a family. I was the lucky one. Like my biological father doesn't know how to be a dad, and that's okay because I have a dad. And he's enough for all of us. It's just also like poignant and like layered, and I could talk about it for hours.
I know. Even the side plots, like I mean, you could kind of see the writing in episode 17 because we had to get Nick away from the big plot around Nancy because we had to see the stuff for the youth center. So George is like, it's the best emergency. I'll take care of it, and like so he can go off and do his thing. But I loved his little standoff with Jake, the cafe owner.
Obsessed. Obsessed. Like, as much of a journey as Nancy was on, I think Nick has been on a journey this season too, of like fully realizing his own power. And I think it's a payoff from, I don't remember what episode, but was it the previous episode? Of just realizing in his community, like, he doesn't have to like back down to these people. Like, he's proud of who he is. And I love when he was like, I'm rich. And I was like, you say it. You've earned it, Nick.
Yeah, he's
right in that guy's face. I loved it.
Yeah. And he's
Jake, rotten hell.
R.I.P. No, but
hate him.
he's not being apologetic for who he is anymore. Nick was so always like treated things with such like a gentle nature, and we do love that about him. But he's so fully at home with everything about himself, because at the start he wasn't sure whether his mom or his dad approved of his lifestyle, and like, look at him now. He's just thriving. And the fact that he was able to get Tamura's help in the situation, and that they follow through on Tamura's promise to do better and everything.
Yeah, that was payoff too.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful.
Nick was like, I'm not going to let you forget that you said that.
Yeah.
Like, good for you, Nick.
He held him to that.
He did. And I think there's just great messaging there about, not only because he knows what it's like to be considered someone that society shouldn't care about. There's assumptions made about his time spent in jail, and he's thinking about these kids and the way that people talk about them, right? Like, Jake is like, what does it matter if it's in the other town? And he's just like, because they belong here. Like, they don't like not belong to the community because you don't approve of their choices. Like, the point is to intercede in their bad choices so that they can have a better life and make better choices that'll put them on a good path. And like the fact that Jake didn't want to help with that, I was like, Jake, you can have your reservations about like safety, but that it shouldn't be like, oh, well, I need to keep the town traditional. And like, it's always been.
We know what that means.
Like, it was just not. It was not okay. So when Nick was like, I bought the building across the street, it's 50 feet away, and you can say nothing. Oh, and I'm putting a cafe in it.
Oh yeah, icing on the cake.
I loved the arc of it too, because at first Nick was like trying to be very diplomatic and like appeal to him, but Jake was still trying to bulldoze him and be racist. And Nick, in that middle part, he was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. And then he was just like, you know what? No, I have money. Sometimes money can be a solution if you put it and bet on it in the right places. And he's betting on his community. And I hope Jake goes out of business.
I hope so. Just run him out of business altogether. But last Nick point, Nick and George, do we think the proposal is actually her wanting to move forward in life, or do we think it was a trauma response to knowing that her lifespan is maybe 10 more years?
I think maybe both can be true, because I don't think she would have had those thoughts if she didn't have like a potential expiration date. Maybe that was a way to help her realize like, oh, I kind of do want these things. So I don't think it would have happened without her realizing that.
Yeah, I feel like on one hand you could perceive this in the way. I remember Sabrina Barry's early proposal to Iris in The Flash to change the future, which did not go down too well. I mean, like, you could perceive it like that, like Reed said, a trauma response to try to change something and like live in the moment right away. But at the same time, I feel like the relationship is strong enough. I just wish we'd seen more of it, but I feel like the relationship is strong enough that they would have gotten to that point at some point. So maybe she is caught up in the moment, and sometimes maybe it's better to live in the moment. So I'm eager to see where they go with this storyline in season 3, because I can see all sides of it. So whichever one they choose, I'm on board with.
Okay, because I'm on the fence about it. I'm like, I could see it. Their relationship has always sort of been on a fast track. I mean, they own a business together. They're living together now. They clearly are building them in a way that they want them to have a future together. So the proposal didn't necessarily, it seemed out of place in the sense that, like, you're right, Reed, it was not something that she would have done had she not had an expiration date, even though she did admit that she'd been thinking about their life down the road. But I guess it was closer to that 10-year mark when she thought that they would get married. But I am so intrigued by the fact that they didn't have him answer.
I know, that's what I was just gonna say. We know Nick is a very logical man. Like, I think he's gonna raise some points. But I feel like that's always how it goes with proposals in season finales or cliffhangers, that the other person like will rarely say yes. But I'm also thinking back to the Gilmore Girls season 5 finale when Rory steals the boat and Lorelai is just like, my life is a mess, and she proposes to Luke because that's like the only thing that she can like, that's what she has left. That's her second strongest relationship. And they actually like, he says yes, and I think they try to get married in the season 6 premiere or something, or like I don't know. I remember them breaking into Dozies and like trying to get like Zima or something. But I don't know. Maybe Nick will be like, whatever, let's do it. I don't know. I do think it might not be for the complete right reasons, but I mean, you only live once. I guess George has it right. I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm glad we don't have to wait. Like, we
Yeah.
will be watching.
Maybe we'll have our answers next week.
Maybe. I hope so. I wonder if they will do a time jump, or if we're gonna go right into like literally right after, like maybe the day after the season finale ends.
You guys are gonna have to like hold me back, because we're gonna talk on Monday and be like, I already finished season 3.
13 episodes. I'm
I
sorry.
can do that in a weekend.
Yep, actually, you could.
I won't.
40.
I promise.
40 minutes each episode. But okay, so before we end, we have. Do we want to manifest? Do we want to toast? Do we want to save it for next week?
Let's manifest.
Yeah.
Riverdale season 7 trailer. We want it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Positive
Because-
thinking.
Positive thinking. You know, by the time the mole, like, that's the mole's second bullet point. So, like, don't run away yet, just mole. But we would like a Riverdale season 7 trailer. Perhaps you can get that to us before even like the pod episode drops. I mean, we would not complain.
Yeah, I mean, she's been taking her time on her recent homework we've given her, so.
Well, to be fair, she's making sure the golf flopped. That's a big responsibility.
That was a big ask.
She followed us through.
She did.
I mean, Riverdale is coming soon, so I mean, like, trailer would be handy, so we'll manifest it.
Like, and I'm going through Riverdale withdrawals. Not enough to like watch it on Netflix, but enough to like want a season 7.
I kind of forgot it was coming now that it's kind of in the conversation again, and I want it yesterday, so any kind of teasers would be fun.
Yes, and then Reed, you had like pitched this to Reed Michael about retrospectives for Flash and Riverdale, and now I want it desperately. Like, I need them to have sat the cast down already.
Like, there were so many shows that ended in 2022 that it makes sense that all 11 or whatever didn't get an hour-long retrospective, not even like a cast interview on Instagram or something. But the Flash and Riverdale paid the CW's bills. Let's call a spade a spade. They deserve an hour-long special along with the series finale to honor these shows, to celebrate them. And they're also the last like 2 enormous shows from the CW brand as we knew it. So I don't know. I'm just I guess this is a preemptive roast just in case they don't do it, because my expectations are low. But I'm really hopeful that they will do some sort of celebration for the Flash and Riverdale. I mean, 90210 got one 10 years ago, and not to put down my favorite show, but like the Flash and Riverdale did a whole lot more for the CW's brand than 90210. That's just honesty. So don't come for me. I'm the biggest 90210 fan in the world.
No, but you make an excellent point. These are arguably the network's 2 biggest shows ever, and the fact that they're ending in the same season is kind
At
of
least this
monumental.
era.
Yeah.
Just to put an asterisk on that point.
Absolutely. But I feel like we did one with Arrow, and that was absolutely worthwhile. But we didn't do that one for Supergirl or Black Lightning, and then the cancellation started. So I would like to, before we say goodbye to the original or modern CW era, I just think we should bid farewell to those shows in style, because they're arguably the biggest ever, certainly the biggest of today's day and age. So let them go out with a celebration instead of like just being a footnote of the many shows at the end this year.
Yeah, no fizzles. We want to bang.
Yes, we and the cast deserve.
Yes.
Even if it's just like a blooper reel, I'll take it. Or like a Comic-Con panel from 4 years ago. I don't care. I want something.
Could you imagine if they reacted to their first Comic-Con panels and that was the retrospective?
I need it. Like, I don't care if they don't even send the Riverdale cast out on like a promotional run. If you give me an hour-long special the night of the series finale, I will forgive all anything else. I want it.
Mhm.
Oh, the Riverdale one would have to air at 7 because or I guess at 10. They can't do 10 because they turn the news on at then. I'm sorry, it's just because Nancy and Riverdale are together finale wise.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, maybe Nancy
Put them
can
on a Sunday. We'll watch.
take a week off. Yeah, do something. They'll figure. We present the idea, you figure out the scheduling.
Mhm.
Yes.
The ball's in their court.
Yes. Take it on over to them, though. Don't let us down. We need this desperately. And then to end, Michael, ITVX, WBCW content. Surprise for international fans.
Big surprise. So the UK has recently launched streaming service ITVX, which is an extension of ITV. It's a catch-up service for soaps like Coronation Street, but it's recently turned into like an actually proper streaming service. And my goodness, did I get a shock when I went onto it the other day and seen a ton of CW and WB content. So you have Arrow, you have The 100, you have All American, which I believe is its UK debut because it was never on over here. You also have then classics like Smallville, Heart of Dixie, Dawson's Creek, The OC, One Tree Hill. So much amazing young adult teen content from the WB days, the CW days. And I know based on the three of us and our likes, it's suddenly become our favorite streaming service. So I love the fact that this streaming service feels like it came out of nowhere. And I'm going to be watching a lot of ITVX, and I hope everyone else in the UK does, because this is high quality content from many, many eras that some of it we never thought we'd see over in the UK. So thank you, ITVX, for introducing them to the UK audiences.
A treasure trove of bangers. Like, it's
Yes.
going to be a game changing. Like, look out for some like pilot review. We're going to get into it. This is
Yes.
so happy for you.
It's gonna be so fun. I cannot wait. Guys, this era of our podcast, even though it's just started, already feels amazing.
Yes. Positive thinking.
Yeah.
Onwards and upwards.
Onwards and upwards. Okay, well, that is it for this super jam-packed podcast episode. We are the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.